thought you might like to have a look at this little radio. I know it's not quite my usual style of things to review, and I got it purely for personal use. My previous little portable radio I bought in Dubai, believe it or not, probably 20 years ago, and it's finally given up the ghost, so I thought it was time to get a new one. Fairly rare that I actually use a portable radio, simply because I'm now the age where I don't have the desire to walk around the streets with a radio strapped to my ear or listen to music at all when I'm out. But it's occasionally useful when the power goes off or emergency, or you go overseas where radio hopefully is a little better than New Zealand radio. Anyway, let's have a look at this radio, because whilst my channel tends to concentrate on hi-fi, and under no stretch of the imagination am I claiming this to be hi-fi, it does have an amazingly good sound. Now, the thing you need to know first of all is look how small it is. If I put my hand there, it's probably one of the smallest full-size radios, if that's not a contradiction of terms. I don't propose to do an in-depth review on this because A, it's not what I do, but I do think if you were looking for a little radio, after I've told you about it, you may well want one. It came from China, from the usual sources, but it does have a proper brand name, and there is actually a company that make these rather than just generic sort of rubbish in a box. It has medium wave and long wave, believe it or not, which is surprising for something that's made predominantly not for Europe. But you can switch long wave off so it doesn't scan it at all, which I've had to do because here in New Zealand, long wave, well, there's just nothing on it, absolutely nothing. And it also has FM stereo, which is available from the headphone socket, and it has airband. Now, here in New Zealand, I don't know why necessarily we don't get anything on shortwave. I've tried this so far with the internal, or I should say the external whip aerial, and there's a long couple of metre, if that's long, lead that comes with it, which acts as an external antenna. Now, the external antenna, if I've got it here somewhere, is just basically a 3.5mm plug on a long piece of wire. Now, although they claim that that's useful for FM, it's not, because the FM aerial, being the frequency that it is, standard broadcast band, the actual aerial, if you add length to it, it doesn't become more sensitive because it mismatches. And this is the same with this. You get better results from the whip aerial, which is that sort of length, which it's obviously tuned to. But the signal strength actually goes down if you use this piece of wire. And I'm not at all surprised, simply because it's too long for the frequency received. But I can't comment on shortwave because I've tried this so far in the day and I've tried it at night, and I can't get anything on shortwave at all, absolutely nothing. I've gone manually until my fingers raw, going round and round with this little what would you call it? Knob, for want of a better word. And you can also tune it on auto, that it will stop when it finds the appropriate signal. But whether it's because we are so far from anywhere, I would have thought I would have probably picked up some shortwave from Australia, which in terms of distance, whilst it's a good 4 hours by aircraft, it's not a long way in terms of shortwave. But I can't pick up anything whatsoever on shortwave apart from the odd squeaks and whistles which shortwave is renowned for. Now, I don't know whether it's faulty or whether we are just so far from anywhere that it just won't pick anything up. But I haven't given up yet. But if there's anybody in New Zealand watching this, maybe they could tell me if they are into shortwaves, whether there's something not right with this, or whether you truly can't pick up anything from shortwave. Now, I seem to recall my previous radio also had shortwave, the one I was telling you about from Dubai, made under the name of Siemens, by the way. Nothing to do with Dubai other than the fact we happened to be there, and that's what I got from the duty-free shop. But the other thing I can't pick anything up on is the air band. Now, there is probably a very good reason for this, because we're quite a long way from any of the airports. The nearest one would be Hamilton, this is in New Zealand of course, which is probably about 30k, maybe a little bit more from the house here. Now, I do plan to go to the airport and see if I can pick up anything there, but certainly I wouldn't expect, in all honesty, to be able to pick up anything so far away, either from an aircraft. But saying that, Hamilton's a very small airport and there's not going to be that much traffic to be received anyway.
With lots of questions about, particularly with all the requirements around self-isolation, trying to understand.
That was a quick listen to FM with a little flash of music, more than I dare put on for you know what reason, and a bit of speech from Radio New Zealand. For the size of it, bearing in mind the speaker is probably, well, you can see from my fingers there how small the speaker is, but believe it or not, when you're playing it loud and you put your hands across it like this, you can actually feel a little draft coming from the speaker. One of the things that they do say is that the speaker is dual cone. When you're playing it quite loud, you can actually see the cone moving inside here, and considering the size that it is, it has a remarkably good low frequency response. But the main thing is, it's clean. I was absolutely amazed when I received it, because I didn't have any pretenses that it was going to sound anything better than a little shitty transistor radio like they always were. I mean, they usually have nothing below about 300 hertz, and even then they don't go up more to about 4K. But I have to say that it does sound remarkably good and very listenable, and voice is quite natural. AM is normally regarded as very, very, very lo-fi, isn't it? It normally comes with a wider than usual IF bandwidth, which means if you've got a clear signal with no interference on the side, you can get, I've got to be careful what I say here, something approaching hi-fi, because normally on little radios the bandwidth is so limited purely to give you that added selectivity that radios often need on medium wave, and also to get the gain that you need, because obviously if you increase the bandwidth, the gain tends to drop. But you can reduce this from wide to 4 to 3 to 2, right down to 1 kilohertz bandwidth. That's not the frequency response, that's the actual width of the received signal. But I have to say, at 1K, there is no HF at all, as you'd expect. But I'll play it to you, and you can judge for yourself. Now, believe it or not, that was AM, and whilst it's not anything approaching hi-fi, it actually did have some HF on it, didn't it? So now I'm going to find a low quality speech channel which is weak and with whistles and buzzes, and I'll demonstrate how you can reduce the IF bandwidth.
That Rita Anderson have it on your phone? Yes, you could. But you could do that with anything in the world. Anything at all. You could take a photo of and say yes, but you don't own it. And that's really what NFTs do, is they give ownership for digital properties which we've never had before. And that's really, I believe, the significant game changer that we're dealing with here.
Okay, so it's to do with
the technology and marking that particular digital asset.
Live, and she'll be the guest performer, so that'll be worth watching. Thank you for your calls, thank you for your company. I'll be back here tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Clearly I can't play too much of that, but for AM on a relatively weak station, I must admit I thought that was pretty good. Because this radio has been designed for worldwide use, something you may not be aware of, but the AM band, as in medium wave, different parts of the world have a different gap between the stations. Some are 9 kilohertz, and that's predominantly Europe and UK, of course, and New Zealand. But other parts of the world, including Canada and America, the gap between the stations is 10 kilohertz. Now, in the days of analog tuning, that didn't matter because you just turned the knob and then you found the station. But with digital station selection, clearly it doesn't know where you are in the world, so it will naturally leap, if you're in America, at 10 kilohertz per jump. Now, if you've then got that receiver in the UK and you put it on auto program find or station find, it will not tune the stations or could even miss them totally. So you have to have a way of changing the jump, so to speak, and you can do that quite readily between 9 and 10 kilohertz, which is something that's quite rare, but can be done. And another interesting thing, it also displays the temperature of the room where the radio is being located. And for the 10 kilohertz jump, it automatically defaults the temperature to Fahrenheit. And when you switch it to 9 kilohertz, it changes that to Celsius, which I thought was an interesting touch, because when I first got the radio, I thought, I don't want the temperature in Fahrenheit. Just a few more things to tell you about it. I should say that there are people on YouTube that have done very in-depth reviews of this product, detailing every single thing that it will do. And that's not the purpose of this. It was just, it's like you came round and I go, oh, look at this, I've just bought this. And needless to say, I have bought it with my money. I'm not sponsored. You know, I don't take sponsorship. It runs on a rechargeable battery, which is included in the price. Now, initially, I just plugged a 5-volt USB into it and it worked fine, and I was messing about. And then, because I thought it's bound to arrive with a flat battery, and I pulled out the USB and lost the whole lot because the battery has got a little plastic tab on it to stop it switching on in transit or draining. And all the time I've been messing about with it, I hadn't been charging the battery, and the battery, it was nearly flat. So before you switch it on, open up the back here and pull the little tab out, and then you won't spend half an hour trying to work out why it's not charging. What else can I tell you? It's backlit,
quote is right about how many...
Oops, it's spun to life. So I think there's valves in here because when you switch it on, it takes about 4 or 5 seconds to actually spring to life, which is unlike most transistor radios, but that's what you get these days, isn't it? Everything has to boot up. One thing I'm delighted about, analog volume control. I just hate digital volume controls where you've got 2 buttons and you press it and it either goes zooming past the place you want it to stop or the other way around. I don't think you can beat an analog volume control because it's just got a perfect feel to it, hasn't it? You know how far to turn it to get the right volume. So I'm showing my age there, I know, but it's the same with all my amplifiers. I never put digital volume controls on with push buttons. I absolutely hate it. Or the current trend, of course, is you turn the knob and it's not like that, maximum and minimum. You've got to turn it about 50 times before you get to anywhere near the right volume. One last and really important thing, it has a manual. I know what you're saying. No one was more surprised than me. And it's in English, not Chinglish or some other strange version of English. You can actually use the manual to find out how it works. Now, I've had this radio a week and I'm still shocked by this because it just doesn't happen, does it? If you're a regular Alibaba or Banggood or eBay, I have to say them all, you know that most things that you get don't have anything with them. But this does. So it's worth the money just to get a manual. Never mind, throw the radio away, but the manual,